start our meeting on tonight. Ms. LaShawn, you're going to give us our safety protocol.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. President Mills, Commissioners, Clint. It is March 5th, 2024, and we are located at 100 West Anderson Street in the Commission Chambers on the 7th floor. We have 3 emergency exits should we need them. We have one at the front of the room, one in the middle of the room, and one to the rear of the room should we have to exit. Our gathering point for everyone in these chambers will be down the stairwell all the way to the first floor, and we will gather at the front of the building, which is actually under the expressway, and that will be our gathering point. Should we need an AED first aid kit or a fire kit, that is, we have fire extinguishers located just outside of the doorway here, one to the stair, one near the entrance here to my right, and then again in the rear. We have our first aid kit, which is located in the closet just behind me. We have the 911 primary will be Orlando Alan Castro. He will call 911. I will be the designated medical person on site. The securities team will assist and direct any emergency responders up to the 7th floor and into the chambers. And that concludes our safety moment for the meeting.
Thank you. Now, at this time, Mr. Orlando Sims, will you come and provide us with the moment of reflection?
Good afternoon, President Mills, Commissioners, and Clint, and to everyone. Today, we are gathered here, and it's important for us to take a moment to reflect on National Good Samaritan Day, a day that is dedicated to the unselfish acts that bind us as a community and reinforce the threads of compassion and service that weave throughout our lives. In our pursuit of diversity, equity, and inclusion, this day serves as a timely reminder that every member of our community has the power to affect positive change. Our roles at OUC might be distinct, but it's our shared commitment to service that unites us. Each one holds a unique position where we have the opportunity to not just do our jobs, but to truly do our work that reaches beyond mere professional duties to touch lives and uplift spirits. At OUC, we understand that serving extends beyond the energy services we provide. It also energizes the community with hope and support. That's why initiatives like OUC Cares and the OUC Empowerment Zone Task Force are so critical. They're not simply corporate social responsibility actions. They're our affirmations of unity and care for the well-being of everyone around us. National Good Samaritan Day calls upon each of us to make a difference, whether that's through volunteering, lending a helping hand to a neighbor in need, or donating to causes that protect and empower the vulnerable among us. It's a chance to acknowledge that everyone can fulfill their job description, but it takes something more profound to resonate with the mission of doing your work, which lies at the heart of true service. OUC's dedication to this community goes beyond the essentials of light and water. It radiates into many lives touched by generosity and the countless moments of support given without expectation of return. As we recognize National Good Samaritan Day, let us be reminded that our society, our communities, and our relationships are not permanently broken. We can restore them, and it can all begin with reaching out to the other, whoever they are, wherever they find themselves. Let us renew our commitment to serve with integrity, to create lasting and meaningful impact, and to continue our work that informs, empowers, elevates this community we're so privileged to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, if you don't mind, would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The time is now
2:04, and I call the March 5th, 2024 Commission meeting to order. Mayor Dyer is not in attendance today, taking care of city business, but I'd like to acknowledge that we do have a quorum present this afternoon, and seeing thus, our next item on the agenda then for this committee is the consideration of the January 23rd, 2024 Commission meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading of the commission meeting and adopt them as published.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we waive the reading of the minutes. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion. We'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Moving right along. We're grateful to see so many of you here today, and looking forward to a great meeting. Mr. Adams will provide us with our service award for today. See, you dressed up for this, huh?
Getting fancier and fancier here. I'd like to call Miss Nyoka White to the front. Nyoka is accompanied by her family members, her mom, Bobby White, father, Richard Boctowal, son, Jafon White, daughter-in-law, Iris Glisser, and daughter, Ashley Gary. Work-related responsibilities include, but are not limited to, new construction meter installations, backflow installation and maintenance, chill water meter installations and replacement, AMI module installations, replacements, and programming. She oversees and manages the meter materials, tools, equipment, and safety PPE for her team. Oversees portable hydrant meter maintenance inspections and delivery to customers. She works directly with customers on metering issues to resolve their concerns, as well as working internally with customer service, customer resolution team, water distribution, water operations, and others to resolve metering issues. That's only a fraction of her responsibilities and scope of work, but I do want to say that Naoka is considered an expert in all aspects of field and back office water meter operations. She loves home renovation projects, party planning and catering, spending time with her grandkids, volunteering, spending time and caring for her parents, and spending time with family and friends. So in closing, I want to share a few comments from her team members. Naoka has been a very fair and kind person to everyone. No matter their title or walk in life, she gives everybody her best. Naoka is an amazing leader and even better person. She is a very caring person. As far as a supervisor, she does such an amazing job managing people and always putting people where they can succeed. She is that standard that others should strive for. Blessed to be learning and growing with such a person. So Naoka, we thank you for your caring leadership and your 20 years of service. Thank you.
Instant. Gotta have some instant gratification.
First time I ever had to bend down.
Nice work. You did a good job. Service.
All right, thank you all so much. As we continue with recognition now, Lemoyne, would you please return again? And we want to look at employee community recognition at this time.
Oh, am I doing this or? Okay. Hello, commissioners. I'd like to share with you today some great news coming out of this year's Florida Municipal Electric Association's Lineman Competition. Also known as the Lineman Rodeo, this year's event was hosted by JEA in Jacksonville on February 23rd and 24th. Am I controlling the slides or are you controlling the slides? Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties here. So through a series of physical challenges set up on the course, the competition tests skills, speed, and safety awareness in tasks that line techs typically see in the field. Categories also test how well linemen can rescue an injured line tech and work with other utilities to render mutual aid. Competitors are required to use climbing equipment to scale 40-foot wood poles rather than relying on the use of a bucket truck. Participants are timed in each event, with judges also monitoring for adherence to competition guidelines and deducting points for mistakes. In other words, competitors have to be fast, precise, and safe. This year, 215 electric line workers from 15 Florida utilities competed in the event. Coach James Alexander and Richard Bowley have worked with the team since November. Thanks to their outstanding efforts, OUC went to Jacksonville ready to compete and made a strong showing. I'd like to show you a brief video that highlights some of that preparation. We don't have a video. We're looking for it. Okay. We'll continue then. I'd like to give a special recognition to our team of Austin Hulk, Line Technician 2, Evan Englert, Line Technician 3, and Nelson Rodriguez, Distribution Operator, Line Tech 1. This team brought home 3 trophies. They placed second in the 4 kV 600 amp disconnect changeout event. They also placed second in the 35 kV suspension bell changeout category. Their results earned the trio a 4th place finish overall in the competition. This was the first time since 2012 that OUC has placed a journeyman team in the top 5. And further good news, during the event ceremony, OUC was recognized with the Florida Municipal Electric Association's Safety Award. This award recognizes OUC for having the fewest work-related injuries compared to total number of hours worked. OUC was one of only 13 utilities to receive this award. This award is all-encompassing of our #1 company value, make safety first. Congratulations to OUC on this significant accomplishment. At this time, I'd like to bring up team coaches James Alexander and Richard Bowley and competitors Austin Hulk, Evan Englert, and Nelson Rodriguez to be recognized.
Everybody's tall. That's awesome. Awesome.
I missed it this year. Congratulations. Congratulations. I love this event. You guys are really talented. Thank you. Way to go. Way to go. Starting off with this. Way to go. Thank you. Thank you for what you've done too. It's awesome. That's the best.
Yeah, if you could ever go to one of the linemen.
And continuing with recognition, Janice, would you please help?
They're so good. I'm excited to give you an update today on OUC's annual charity golf tournament, which took place at Shingle Creek Golf Club on Saturday, February 17th this year. While the weather was very soggy that day, it didn't dampen our spirits or those of the 144 golfers who participated. And through the support of our corporate partners, 4 nonprofit organizations from Orange and Osceola County were beneficiaries of this year's tournament. All 4 of them are here today, and they'll be coming up later. They are Housing and Neighborhood Development Services of Central Florida, the Cloud Family Foundation, Back to Nature Wildlife Refuge, and the Asian American Chamber of Commerce of Central Florida. Each of these organizations are devoted to improving the lives of the communities we serve through social impact, economic development, educational outreach, and environmental stewardship. We're deeply privileged to stand alongside these remarkable organizations, each leaving an indelible mark on Central Florida. I'm excited to let you know that each of these charities received $10,000 base support from our fundraising activities. And then while there were some competition games that raised an additional $1,000 for each charity that they'll be receiving as well. This tournament would not have been possible without our generous sponsors who fully funded the event. We're grateful for their support and commitment. At this time, I'd like to direct your attention to a video on the screens of the 2024 tournament. It features President Mills and Chief Customer Marketing Officer Linda Ferroni this year to learn more about the event.
Here we are at beautiful Rose and Shingle Creek, out here for the OUC Charity Golf Tournament. This is comprised of employees, retirees, friends, and sponsors of OUC four-pillar charity outlook. We have a four-pillar approach to charity, and 4 different groups will benefit from our gathering here today.
Since 1995, which is quite some time now, we've been doing this tournament. We've raised over $1 million for over 70 nonprofits in Orange Osceola County, which we're so proud of. But we really focused this year on social impact and economic development, educational outreach, and environmental stewardship. So we're really doing great things for the community. I'm very proud of what it is we do.
It's a good feeling to be able to give back, knowing that as you receive, you also give. So we're grateful for the opportunity.
We give back to the community every single day in our normal jobs. So to go over and above like this several times a year is really wonderful.
I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to all of the OUC employees who contributed to the success of this year's tournament. I want to especially thank those who helped secure the sponsors, as well as those who dedicated a Saturday to ensure we had a successful tournament. Thank you for partnering together to help us have a successful event and to help our community. I'd like to ask Queen Maslin, she's a senior community engagement coordinator, as well as the project lead on this event. She made it all happen with help from her team. To come up to distribute the checks to each organization's representative and help them with the photo with President Mills and Clint. So President Mills and Clint, if you can please join Queen. First, we'll have Jill McReynolds, Executive Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development Services of Central Florida, go up to accept the check. And Stephanie will be taking photos. Great, thank you so much. Next, we have Kelly Verduin, the Assistant Director of Back to Nature Wildlife Refuge. Next is Justin Cloud, the Executive Director and Founder of the Cloud Family Foundation. Thank you so much for being here. last but not least is V Ma with the Asian American Chamber of Commerce of Central Florida. Thank you for being here, V. Thank you for being here. Yes, thank you. It's okay, you're fine. Thank you for being here. Okay,
And
President-
may I just make one comment for the record?
of course, President
My
Mills.
team did win fairly.
Yes, that's true. President Mills' team did win. And you also did great on camera.
Oh, thank you.
We got a lot more of that coming for you.
Why did you have to say you won fairly? Why couldn't you say that?
There was a certain COO making accusations.
Okay. He knows how to count.
He knows how it should be.
I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. I would like to point everybody to this card that's in front of you, commissioners. You should all have it. Everybody in your seat, there should be a card in front of you. We like to hand these out before April, which is Water Conservation and Earth Month, which is one of OUC's busiest months of the year when it comes to community engagement. We make a real focus on environmental stewardship. On the front at the bottom, you'll see that we're promoting the awards for the watercolor project, where we recognize the students who have won for either their rain barrels or their calendar artwork that's featured in our annual calendar. And then on the back, you'll see a series of events. At the top is our Science Center partnerships. As you know, with the Science Center in the city of Orlando, we built the Tiny Green Home, which mainly lives at the Science Center but goes on tour to different events. It will be at the Lake Eola Earth Day in April. And we also in April anticipate unveiling the exhibits that we told you about back in the fall as part of the Future of OUC 100, alternative water supply and moving towards a distributed grid. Very excited about that. You'll see that the rain barrels will be displayed at a lot of different events. It'll be at the City Arts Partnership exhibit. It'll also be at UCF Celebrates the Arts. It'll be on display they'll be on display for 2 weeks there. The OUC Volunteer Project is listed here on 413, and we just decided that we will be doing a lake and park cleanup, and we're super excited to do that over in Metro West. A few volunteers will be putting on boots and wading into the actual lake. Trash to Trends, we are the presenting sponsor. We'll have a rain barrel on display there, as well as we're working on having an EV present for that event. Finally, I'll call your attention to JDRF One Walk at the bottom. We are the water sponsor for that event to help ensure that people have water as they go around on the walk for that loop. We're going to promote these different events with this card and through other means. We'll be putting it in open areas at local restaurants or cafes for people to pick up there. We're going to partner with the library to have it at the library. And we're also trying to work with Orange County Public Schools to make sure all of the schools that were part of the watercolor project get copies of this card. Any questions on this, commissioners? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our employee and community recognition. At this time now, we'll move to the affirmative action. That's the HR and me coming out.
One more.
Oh, we have one more?
Yes, we have one more.
Oh, Linda, I'm sorry. Yes, please, the residential customer champion.
Thank you, President Mills, Commissioners, and Clint. Last but not least, I'm very happy to be standing in front of you to celebrate with you today OUC's recognition as a 2023 Residential Customer Champion. Oh, thank you. There we go. This prestigious title really underscores our commitment to excellence in engaging our customers in meaningful ways every day. The 2023 residential study on utility trust and customer engagement conducted by Escalent's Cogent Syndicated involves over 75,000 residential customers across 141 utilities nationally, focuses on human behavior and analytics. Only 34 of the 141 utilities that participated were named as customer champions. So I'm proud to say OUC scored #1 in the state of Florida with the highest score here. In the nation, we came in ranked 5th overall. So we're very, very proud of that. Some additional insight I'd like to share is just to highlight some components of the survey. The index is made up of 3 main elements: service satisfaction, brand trust, and customer focus. So under service satisfaction, OUC scored highest in safety and reliabilities. Customers really found it meaningful and were particularly satisfied in the variety of ways that we communicate with them about safety during an outage. Under customer focus, OUC ranked top nationally in the Community Support Index, leading the nation with satisfaction related to supporting local charities and causes, which you've heard about today. OUC's participated in the study, the Utility Trusted Brand and Customer Engagement Study since 2014. We really have been very steadfast in our pursuit of customer-centric practices, and this recognition really does validate our efforts. I do want to express my tremendous gratitude towards the entire OUC team. This really is a team sport. Their dedication, professionalism, unwavering commitment to our customers has made this achievement possible, as well as those years before. So we will continue to prioritize customer engagement, ensuring that OUC remains a leader in our industry and a champion for our customers looking into the future. Thank you so much.
That's awesome, and don't miss the fact that that #5 ranking came out of 141 agencies across the nation. That's amazing. We ought to give them a hand for that. Thank you. All right, at this time now, we're ready for the affirmative items. We'll move to the affirmative items portion of our agenda. Clint, do we have any requests from the public to speak?
No request from the public on
No
affirmative
request?
items, no, sir.
Okay, no speakers at this time then. Clint, do you have any comments or presentations regarding the affirmative act?
Yes, thank you, President Mills, Commissioners. I do have one agenda item I would like to highlight for the Commissioners here today, and that's A16. I'm going to ask Justin Kramer to come up and lead this presentation. This is a pilot project. This is exactly the kind of things that we're doing in emerging technology, and I think this is an exciting opportunity as we think about DC fast charging level 3 chargers, and then we think about the opportunities for battery storage and or the opportunity to perhaps lower capital costs as we can perhaps leverage these batteries during peak system demand. And so this is exactly what we're going to do over at the Gardenia facility and study a variety of different use cases to really understand this technology opportunity, perhaps where we should deploy it, perhaps the volume that we should consider. And so it's an exciting project, and I thought Justin should just give you a nice little overview of the scope and the project and where we're headed. So Justin?
Sounds good, thank you.
All yours.
President Mills, Commissioners Clint. Here to talk to you about the battery integrated high-speed level 3 charging station for electric vehicles pilot. Just to kind of zoom out just a bit, OUC is on our path to clean energy. And as part of this path to clean energy, we're growing our portfolio. But with that, we need tools in the grid to be able to respond to these clean energy solutions and provide us some grid services. And so distributed energy storage is really something that we need throughout our grid. We're also answering the call of high-speed charging for our customers. We have a lot of customers who are adopting EV throughout the grid, and we want to make sure that we're providing them with the reliability and consistency that they need to rely on that technology. We're also dealing with a lot of changes in technology where technologies are adapting, technologies are changing, and so we want to really protect ourselves kind of long-term and make sure that we're kind of making those long-term decisions that provide as much strength and resiliency for our customers. And then by testing technologies, we can really understand what the risks of them are and how we can deploy them, like Clint was mentioning earlier. So if we think about a standard high-speed charger today, this is actually over at our Robinson Hub charging solution. They're 120 kilowatts DC. They require a little bit of a larger AC side because of the conversion losses of transferring from AC to DC. But we have to design all of the infrastructure for that site to respond to 100% of that load. And so it requires a significant amount of infrastructure. That site itself is a little over a megawatt of required demand. So that's a lot of infrastructure that we have to put in and a lot of capital cost up front. The solution that we're talking about today is the X-Charge NZS station. As you can see, this charger can deliver 172 kilowatts of charging to the vehicle, but on the grid side, we only require about 23 kilowatts of power. So it requires a lot less infrastructure to install this type of a solution. The solution comes with a 150 kilowatt, 233 kilowatt hour battery on board. And we can basically use that battery to reduce the peak demand considerations of high-speed charging, along with a lot of other useful considerations. One of the big ones that we looked at is resiliency and reliability. You know, as OUC is the reliable one, we want to make sure that we're supplying our customers whenever they need power. And one of the nice things about having the battery on board is that we can supply customers with power even during an outage so that they can charge and rely on the ability to get to where they're going, especially in contingency events like hurricanes. So one of the things that we did is we looked at the Robinson Hub again and looked at basically the charging profiles of our customers at the Robinson Hub, picking on some of the most used chargers that we have there and how much energy was actually going through those chargers. And so at this point, we saw at about 175 kilowatts per day of energy that is being used. So this charger at 233 could more than supply an entire day of charging without grid connection at that point. So that's a nice added feature that we can provide resiliency to our customers using a solution like this. Some other benefits are bidirectional charging. So the X-Charge has the ability to take power from the grid to charge the vehicles, but also provide power back to the grid when we may need it. So in situations where we have fluctuations from solar or we have generation considerations or congestion, we can actually use this device to provide power back to the grid and provide those grid services, balancing generation, voltage support, frequency support, even energy arbitrage. So we have a lot of functions that we can do with this technology and really provide kind of a stacked value to OUC from one specific piece of technology. This pilot will allow us to understand how to leverage those types of technologies. You know, we've been slowly growing our experience and understanding of distributed technologies. We're starting to put them in more locations and understand how we can operate them together to provide that kind of grid value. So we're not just getting locational value, we're starting to look at the larger grid itself. And then we talked about the lowering power demands reduces infrastructure costs. You know, as the technologies change with EV, the average EV is a 5 to 10 year asset, 30-year distribution upgrade lifespans. There's a little bit of a disconnect when it comes to the possibility of stranded assets. So we want to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on that. So this device will actually be installed in our grid integration laboratory first. This is our test bed of all new technologies. We'll be able to test the technology there and really evaluate what are the operational considerations, what communication requirements do we have to put into place, how would we dispatch it, what is really the monetization strategy of this technology for us moving forward. So as we consider additional charging locations for high-speed charging, we can know, should we go like Robinson Hub and do a charging hub, or should we use something like this, which provides us a little more flexibility and reliability and resiliency considerations. And so again, it's a fleet of tools that we need in order to solve our clean energy path. This is another tool that we'll be able to use and leverage in that space. The other benefit of us doing this research is that we actually were able to negotiate a cheaper cost for the technology with the vendor due to the research that we're doing. We'll be providing them with our lessons learned, our wants and desires as a utility, what our expectations are, and they'll be leveraging that to provide value to them on their development roadmap, while we're also able to kind of frame the conversation with the vendors on what utilities will need to make these technologies successful long-term within our grid. So we'll be able to take the lessons learned out of this technology and then share those with our operational teams and new products and services and lighting and electrification as they determine what technologies to dispatch within our grid long-term. So with that, we're requesting commission approval of a purchase order to X-Charge Energy USA to provide a NZS X-Charge battery integrated high-speed level 3 charging station in the amount of $173,000. Any questions or comments?
No, great presentation. Thank you.
I mean, you know I'd love this.
We expect to have you out soon to take a look.
I'd love to see that. I'd also like to know what's going on with the hydrogen storage.
Very close.
Stuff you've got. Very good.
Thank you.
Any other comments, commissioners? All right. Before we vote on these affirmative items, again, I'd like to ask, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to the commission on this time?
Non-affirmative items.
Yes, I was just getting ready to ask. Are there any comments or questions from the commission?
Can I ask one question? And I didn't have time to see if there were responses in here, so I apologize for being really backlogged today. But on A2, I think that's the contract for, I think it's maintenance and maybe some operations stuff at SEC at Stanton. But you're also including in that, in this project or contract, you're including the coal unit number 1. And so I'm wondering, like, this contract goes like out through 2029, and if I recall correctly, that unit number 1 isn't the plan to shut that thing down in 2025? So I'm just wondering, like, what happens, you know, are we paying for something we're not going to use, or did something change?
The Emerson contract covers CCB, Stanton 1 and 2, OGS, and Indian River units. So the contract funding for Stanton 1 is only for 24 and 25.
Okay.
The other units go through 20.
Okay, all right. It does cut off right where we
Yep.
think it does. Nice. That was easy. Thank you.
Told you guys she reads. Moving right along. All right. Any other?
That's all for me.
Okay. All right. Well, at that point then, is there a motion to approve affirmative items A1 through A19?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Is there any further discussion needed? No discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. New business. We'll begin with our financial report. Mindy, Ms. Brene, will you present?
I'm so used to being in that corner, I had to travel across. Good afternoon, President Mills, Commissioners Clint. Thank you, Francis. Well, I have it in front of me. I don't know that that'll help you, just me talking about the numbers. Good afternoon. We have the January financials in front of you here. We actually have the full financials this month. It is a little early for us to provide you an insight in February. This is officially day 3 of our month, so not quite ready for prime time. But for January, you can see that we are about 2.4 million favorable on revenue. And then really, we're pretty darn close on expenses to give us about a little bit of a tailwind of 3.3 million as we go into the shoulder months of the spring and then into the summer. That is, if you look in your packet, you have the December MD&As about 800, maybe 800,000 favorable. So we continue to build on a little bit of cushion as we go into those summer months. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great. That's probably your quickest report. All right.
Rounding third.
Yeah. Mr. Browder, Chris, anything from legal? All right. All right. And once more, as we move through the agenda, I have to ask, are there any members of the public that want to address the board at this time?
None at this time.
All right, seeing none. Clint.
Thank you, sir. I do have a few items under general manager comments that I would like to share with the board today. I am going to go back. So I think we got the video sort of dialed in. I know the gentleman in the back have been waiting patiently. I would like to show the video to show, again, the board what they've gone through from a training standpoint. So can we roll that video, please? know, they say a definition of a professional is someone that makes it look easy. And those gentlemen make it look easy going up and down that pole. I assure you, it is not easy and it takes a lot of hours in training. So hats off to the gentlemen. So thank you so much for representing OUC and bringing home some hard work. Congratulations again. Okay, we'll transition. I do have a few items. I think I see Kevin and Terry Torrens. I feel like it's time we give a legislative update. Kevin's going to kick us off and give us a little bit of update of some activities that have been going on in Tallahassee, and then Terry will follow up and give us a little bit of activities that have been going on with DC. So Kevin, Terry, I will turn it over to you folks.
All right. Good afternoon, President Mills, Commissioners, Clint. We appreciate your time this afternoon to give you a little bit of an update on what's going on in both Tallahassee and Washington. As Clint mentioned, I'll give you the update on what's going on up in Tallahassee and is actually still going on as we speak. Okay. So the legislative session lasts for 60 days. It's actually scheduled to end this Friday if they can bring everything in for a landing. Typically what they're working on at the last minute is the state budget. And just today, they agreed on a state budget, about $117 billion. So what happens now is that budget sits there for about 3 days. They can vote the budget out on Friday and officially end the legislative session. So far to date, about 1,900 bills have been filed and almost 70 have been approved by both chambers, the House and the Senate. 7 have made it to the governor, 2 of which were vetoed, and those both had to do with social media and limiting access to social media by our youth here. So that was vetoed, and believe it or not, in lickety-split time, the House and Senate have put together another bill on limiting social media, and we'll send that through to the governor. That one might be a little bit more palatable to him, and he might sign that one. So like I mentioned, 3.5 days left. If they can bring it in for the landing on the budget, all should go good there. Some of the headline issues that you've probably read about in the paper or on the news, deal with everything from education deregulation, kind of limiting, some of the things that go on with testing and trying to make things better for schools, healthcare, trying to increase the number of doctors and nurses in the state as we continue to grow, and there are shortages there. Insurance is always a big topic in Florida, both for homeowners and things like automobiles and things like that. And then some of the more crazy things dealing with removing monuments from public spaces. I already mentioned social media is going on there. Tax breaks, the tax package is always a very big issue up in Tallahassee. And you'll be happy to know that included in the upcoming tax package again this year will be a disaster preparedness tax holiday that our customers can take advantage of in order to buy things to prepare themselves for storm season. So when I get the list of all the things that are available, I'll make that available to our communications team so they can share that with our customers. So those are some of the bigger headline issues that have been going on. And of course, one of the bigger ones is that our governor kind of came back from the campaign trail and sort of threw a monkey wrench into a lot of things, exerting his influence over a lot of the things that are going on in Tallahassee. But what I'd like to do is just kind of, update you on some of the key issues. There were 5 key bills that we were really honed in on this year, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each of those on the following slides. But I wanted to mention some of the other bills that were on our radar and kind of where they are. And I mentioned it's a fluid situation up there. It's the last 3 days of session. Bills are going back and forth between the House and the Senate, literally across the rotunda in the Capitol. Amendments are going back and forth, so things change daily here. I will mention that a bill on broadband passed several years ago. A bill was passed that allowed broadband providers to have a promotional rate to attach to municipal utility poles at $1 a month. And that's going to be extended for a few more years. There's a lot of funding coming in from the federal government to expand broadband, and this will allow the broadband companies to reach out to and underserved areas of the state for broadband. It's probably not a big issue for OUC. Maybe some of the areas that we have in more rural St. Cloud service territory might be impacted. This one probably won't be a big issue for us, but it did go through just the same. Another issue moving through is related to United States produced iron and steel, meaning that if you have a public works project, of which our projects by the definition included in the law would be included, would have to use US-based iron and steel. There are some parameters if there's supply chain issues or the price is astronomical. And in a prior session, we were able to get an amendment in there that exempted pretty much all of our electric apparatus from this bill. So we did pretty good on that one. The only thing not included are the transmission towers and distribution poles that might be made out of metal. Those would fall under the regular rules. You may wonder why there's a Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services bill on that list, and among a lot of other things that deal with preserving state lands and some other stuff I won't get into, there is some language in that bill that basically preempts the regulation of electric vehicle charging stations to the state. We weren't real fans of the bill. We couldn't push back on it too tough, because there was so much momentum on a lot of ag issues in this bill. We don't really like it. It's pretty close to the finish line, and it would impact the city of Orlando, who does have an electric vehicle make-ready ordinance on the books. So what would happen is that if this bill passes, in the upcoming year, the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, probably their Office of Energy, would be responsible for making rules that the entire state would have to follow whenever you were putting in new electric vehicle charging stations and spaces. So we would want to make sure that we're involved in that rulemaking process so we can exert some influence to try to make sure that things, continue to be positive and forward that market. A couple other things on there. The state likes to, lately in the past few years, preempt issues to the state, meaning take away power and control from the local governments and bring it back up to Tallahassee. They're doing that on potentially on workforce, heat regulations. There were some cities and counties down in South Florida that wanted to put their own ordinances in, and the state says, oh, we can't have different rules all over the state. We're going to take that over. So that looks like something that might be preempted to the state as well. So they might be coming out with rules at some point in the future on how you have to treat field workers that are out in the heat. There were some other issues on some statewide drinking water standards that didn't pass. There were a plethora of bills that dealt with municipal utility rates that did not pass. But there's one that I'm going to bring back and mention to you in a minute that also didn't pass. And each year, it seems the state wants to bump up the limits on sovereign immunity. That's the maximum amount a municipality, a city or government can pay if they are found to have done something wrong. Each year, they try to look at bumping that up. They compromise. They go back and forth. And once again, this year, it fell flat. It's a battle between the different sides of the trial bar up in Tallahassee. And you can kind of watch things go back and forth. And once again, it didn't quite make it this year. So a couple of the key bills that I want to mention, the ones that we were really focused on and spent a lot of our time on, myself, as well as our team in Tallahassee, our trade allies, and the other municipal utilities. The first one I'll mention is damage to critical utility infrastructure. In the past few years, there's been several high-profile incidents in the news where individuals have destroyed public infrastructure. A couple of the ones that kind of caught our eye were some individuals in North Carolina, and I believe the state of Washington that actually shot up substations and put people in the dark and in the cold during some of the coldest time out there. I know that at that point in the past, I know Clint said, hey, we need to do something here in Florida. He mentioned it to me, our trade association, and we put together some model language that we borrowed from some of the other states that had this in place and said, hey, this is something we need to discourage individuals. What this bill does is it increases both the civil and the criminal penalties. So it turns it into a second-degree felony, ups the fines to about $10,000 in addition to paying restitution for whatever is damaged. So we got this little bill going, and what started out as a bill for, water, electric, wastewater, and gas, just kind of the core municipal functions. Everybody loved this bill. This bill now protects everything from airports to spaceports to vertiports, natural gas transmission lines, manufacturing facilities, seaports, rail yards. Everyone jumped on this, all the other critical infrastructure in the state. So this one's already kind of passed and moved through both chambers, and been sent to the governor for his consideration. So, this bill that got going was kind of, a brainchild of ours and Clint's leadership there to get it moving. So that was a great victory for us. Another one that's important to us, and I've mentioned this in the past when I've been here, is we have a public records meeting exemption for both our records and meetings related to the security of our information technology and operational technology systems. We don't feel that we should have to share that critical information on how we protect our infrastructure, our IT, our OT, our grid, our computer systems here with anyone else that's outside of OUC. So we were able to extend that meeting and records exemption into the future for a few years. So we will continue to be able to shield those documents and meetings from the public the way we should so we can protect our infrastructure. Okay, so this was the year, it's been rumored every single year, I think for about the last 5 years, that we're going to have a big energy package. As you can see by all the words on this slide, this is the year that it really got going. It was a priority of the Speaker of the House. This is one of those bills that is now playing ping pong right now, back and forth between the House and Senate. Just this morning, I thought it was going through, and the brakes got hit. So this basically rewrites the state's energy policy. So there's a lot of individual sections in there and words put in on which way the state should go to balance everything from fuels to resiliency to stability, cybersecurity, everything related to our energy in the state. There's just a few things that I wanted to point out in the bill. One of the things they put in there would require all municipal and actually cooperative utilities to have at least one mutual aid agreement in place before the start of storm season each year. So we did some checking, and we have agreements in place with all of the co-ops, all of the munis, and the 3 big investor-owned utilities in the state. So we are completely covered on this, and that's something that our team here maintains each year, and we have great coverage on that. So this really isn't an issue for us. This got put in the bill because a couple of the co-ops that were up in the Big Bend area, I think it was Hurricane Idalia, went through their area where there's not, Perry, Florida, Cedar Key, Steinhatchee, that are all served by co-ops. They took it pretty bad, and they had a hard time recovering because they didn't have enough mutual aid in place. So that's why that got put in there. We've got it covered. A couple of the other things I'll mention in there is that if an investor-owned utilities doesn't actually apply to municipals or co-ops, but if an investor-owned utility wants to shut down any of their generating assets, any of their power plants, before they intended to in their 10-year site plan, they need to take that to the Public Service Commission, and they want to give that some oversight to make sure that the state can handle doing something like that. They are concerned with making sure the state's grid is up and stable and reliable, and they want to make sure that with the state's continual move towards natural gas and renewables, that we can still balance everything out. So if an investor-owned utility were moving too quickly, they could put the brakes on that.
Can I ask a question about that?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't the PSC already have that authority for an IOU?
They do monitor the overall responsibility for looking at the state's grid, but this specifically puts it in there that if you're trying to close down a plant prior to when it's scheduled to be retired in your 10-year site plan, they get to come back and have oversight. And conduct a hearing and do a whole study. So it'll basically put the brakes on closing that plant down until they figure out what the impacts will be.
Hopefully the utility already thought that through, but it's okay.
Yeah, just a couple other things I'll mention in this big energy bill. There's some language in there that allows investor-owned utilities to keep offering electric vehicle charging stations to their customers, with the caveat that it must be paid for by the customers that are using the charging stations and not their entire rate base. Some of the pushback in Tallahassee is that the entire rate base should not be subsidizing electric vehicle charging stations that are only used by a small portion of their customers. So I don't think this will be a problem for the investor-owned utilities as they expand their electric vehicle charging footprints. but that's the language that's put in there right now. Will be required, one of the other requirements in there is the PSC is going to conduct a couple studies. One of them is related to the security, both physical and cyber, and reliability of the state's energy grid. We provide a lot of this information, already to both the state and I think several federal agencies will be required to, participate in this exercise with the Public Service Commission as well. Again, should not be an issue for us. And then the last thing I'll mention on there is the state is looking, beyond, what's next? How do we maintain our grid stability, resiliency, and make sure everything is good into the future? As they want to start looking at, alternative fuels. One of those fuels is new technologies related to nuclear energy. So they're going to conduct a study on small modular reactors and try to figure out if that technology has a place in Florida, and if so, where that might be and how it might affect our system. So this bill, like I mentioned, hasn't passed yet. It is going back and forth as we speak. It was one of the priorities of the Speaker of the House, so I have a feeling it's going to make it there. It's just going to get massaged a little along the way. Probably one of the bills we spent the most time on this year was related to municipal utilities. You've heard me talk about this one in prior years. This was the bill that I'd say it impacts OUC, but it really impacts our relationship with the city of Orlando more than OUC directly. It would put limits on how much we could transfer to the city of Orlando from the customers that are located outside the municipal limits, and how much money from those customers could actually go into the general fund. Would have required that we had additional public meetings with some groups that we traditionally don't meet with. We would have had to go outside and meet with Orange County or any other city that we provide services to allow them to give input and feedback on everything from how we're conducting our business to our rates. That was included in there, as well as, I mentioned before, issues related to charging, different rates to customers located outside of your city limits. So this bill made it all the way through the House. It had a lot of support. We were able, and myself, Lakeland, JEA, our trade association, and a bunch of other folks, we were able to really push back on this bill, and it was never heard in the Senate. So it never got a hearing, and so it didn't go anywhere. So we did good this year. We did very well on this one. However, it's going to be back next year. The House sponsor will be moving up in rank and probably have her own committee chairmanship. And it'll be back again, and we're really going to try to work over the summer and into the fall to see if there isn't some compromise that we can make to put things together. Okay, and since I've been rattling on here for a while, the last thing I'm going to mention has to do with electric vehicles. And so you've heard me mention before that the state is trying to figure out how electric vehicles are going to impact the State Transportation Trust Fund. That's the fund where all of the dollars go that are collected from gas taxes. And so they know with more and more electric vehicles coming along that some of those collections, are going to go down related to electric vehicles. So they're trying to figure out how we're going to handle this. The House and the Senate took two very different approaches. The Senate said, we're going to start charging you $200 for an electric vehicle. We're going to charge you $50 for a plug-in hybrid, and we're even going to charge you $25 for an electric motorcycle, which I didn't know there were a lot out there, but apparently so. So they wanted to go right ahead and figure out, and start collecting money to fill that hole in the State Transportation Trust Fund. The House had a different idea. They wanted to study things. They wanted to slow things down. I know Clint has had some concerns with just jumping right in and picking a number out of thin air. The House wanted to make sure that it was studied and those numbers were accurate and correct, and make sure that people weren't paying twice if they were paying, certain fees, to use electricity, to buy electricity. Is any of that going back to the trust fund? How are they being taxed on that, and where is it going? So as you'll remember, back from civics, the House and the Senate did not agree. They cannot come to terms on this, and so the bill will not pass this year. They both dug in their heels. No one's willing to give in to the other side. I've been watching it today. And it's not going to move this year. It will probably be another issue. That's back again next year, and we'll advocate for the House position that looks to do a good study to make sure that we are accurately and fairly charging EV drivers for their share of road taxes. So, and with that, I will turn it over to Terry to talk about federal issues.
This one. Good afternoon, President Mills, Commissioners, Clint. My name is Terry Torrens. I'm your Senior Legislative Representative here at OUC. Coming to bring you the exact opposite of what Kevin brought you. In Congress, things move very slowly. So lots going on, but nothing really happening. So I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of what we've been seeing going on the Hill, a lot of budgeting stuff, presidential election stuff. Not a lot of legislation expected to move this year because of the presidential election. So it's going to be a complete shift of gears from the sprint that is Tallahassee. We're going back to the marathon, which is DC. So obviously 2024 is a presidential election year. Not much is expected to happen in DC. Obviously, a lot of the members are back in their districts campaigning. So with that and the slim margins in the House and the Senate, just not a lot is expected to happen. There's going to be some must-pass legislation and some funding, supplemental funding, continuing resolution stuff, but that's pretty much what we're going to see up in Capitol Hill this year. As you know, this week, Supreme Court of the United States weighed in on the Trump being removed from the ballot in certain states as being unconstitutional. So moving forward, he'll be on all the ballots moving forward for the next primaries. Trump's leading in the polls and in the swing states, and currently for him to clinch the nomination, he needs 1,215 delegates. Today, of course, is Super Tuesday, so that means 16 states and 1 U.S. territory are voting, and the most at stake right now is the Republican nomination as Biden continues to run unopposed. Some other recent federal announcements are Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced he was going to step down as leader, but not as a senator. Stepping up to the plate are what they're referring to as the three Johns. Senator John Cornyn of Texas, Senate Minority Whip John Thune of South Dakota, and Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. Also, Biden administration announced recently 3 new nominations for FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We don't have an official announcement on when their hearings will be. And those 3 individuals are Judy Chang, David Rossner, and Lindsay C. Sorry, I didn't have a slide for that. Some of this stuff happens so quickly, it's hard to keep my slides up to date when it comes to making sure I get to you guys. So what we're looking at here is the funding of the federal government. As we know, it continues to make the news, most recently regarding continuing resolutions needed to fund the government and prevent a shutdown. The last time Congress actually passed a full budget was 1997. Continuing resolutions are a tool that are used to fund portions of the government temporarily. What you see up here as a reference to March 1st was the original deadline for the continuing resolution, which they kicked the can down the road to this coming Friday. Why is that important? Because the State of the Union is Thursday. Nobody wants a State of the Union with a government shutdown. That doesn't look good no matter which side of the aisle you're on. What you will see, some of the sources of funding that you're going to find in that initial continuing resolution, which will be this coming Friday, is agriculture, energy, water, military construction, housing, urban development, subjects like that. The second one, which you see referenced on the slide, is March 8th, which is now March 22nd. And some of the funding measures that are included in this bill are commerce, justice, science, homeland security, labor, health, and human services. Senior legislators have agreed on the top line number. So whenever you have a continuing resolution, you basically, what happens is the senior leadership from both the House, Senate, and the administration all get together and go, okay, we agree that we're going to pass a bill for X amount of dollars. And then they begin to negotiate or argue or discuss, however you want to describe it, which funding category gets which amount of dollars. And that's kind of where they're at the moment. Another thing that happens at this point in time are something called legislative riders. Legislative riders can create friction when they get added to bills. Some of the ideas or some of the subjects that you find in legislative riders are abortion limits, but one that's in particular that's important to OUC and the industry is the Department of Energy has a transformer efficiency rule, and that we're looking at that and watching that very closely, because if that gets into a continuing resolution, it's going to come to fruition a little bit sooner than we expected it to. And And on this slide here, we have emergency supplemental funding. So continuing resolutions are what funds the government for their general day-to-day type practices. When you have emergency supplemental funding, it could be for hurricanes, it could be for wars, things like that. Currently, right now, what they're looking at, the House Republicans are continuing to struggle with funding on topics such as Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, border security, and immigration. And then the House Republican caucus itself continues to scuffle, and it shows little confidence in the newly elected Speaker Johnson. There's some discussions around the Hill whether he's going to make it to the end of the conference or not. And then lastly, I just wanted to call to your attention some actual activity that has happened on the Hill, which is committees of jurisdiction. So OUC is subject to oversight of a number of different agencies. Anything that comes up through certain committees ends up in like the EPA, Department of Energy, things like that. So when there's certain committees having hearings, we like to watch and pay attention because they have the potential to either impact us directly or they basically signal to us what's coming, whether it's regulations that's coming, what they're thinking about regulations that are coming. So some of the committees that we've watched and paid attention to is an oversight of the EPA or the Environmental Protection Agency's particulate matter rule. Challenges to the electric reliability and affordability, which I hear you're going to hear about a little bit later today. Legislative hearing to promote U.S. pipeline infrastructure, and then the oversight of the administration's pause. So the White House came out and paused LNG or liquid natural gas exports for the country. And so they had a hearing to kind of analyze that. So that was done on the House side. As you know, anything gets done in one chamber, we need to see it done in the other, much like what Kevin's talking about. So in the Senate, we have the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. They also held a very similar hearing that was held in the House about the liquid natural gas. And then lastly was the Senate Budget Committee had a hearing about the oversight of climate risks in repayment of municipal bonds, which we've been seeing in bond applications for years now. So that's really nothing new. They're just watching that and seeing how it's moving forward as the Congress goes through its last year in its session. And with that, do you have any questions for Kevin or I?
Thank you.
Terrific.
All right.
Next.
Really nice work.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Terry. I'm going to ask Attila to come up. I want to give the board an overview of the long-term reliability update from NERC. This is a follow-up, and if you think back a few years ago, we had Jan come and talk about some of the unique weather patterns that impacted California during 2020 on the heat side in August. You remember then we followed up and we talked about Storm Uri in Texas area, and then we talked about Storm Elliott. Both winter events, both extreme weather events. And at that point, NERC decided to go and do a more detailed report for the industry. And NERC's purpose is to make sure that we've got reliability on the bulk power system. And I think this really dives into resiliency. And so, Commissioner Gross, when you asked about some of the items that were coming up from the state of Florida, resiliency, I believe, is beginning to get people's attention more so with these extreme weather events. And I think there's a variety of industry issues that are driving this subject. And so, when you think about some markets are structured slightly different than the state of Florida. Some markets are deregulated, and further, some have an energy market. So perhaps not sending the right price signals to make sure that we've got units that can perhaps back up intermittency. We've got intermittent resources that are continuing to advance with solar and wind. And then we've got retirements of fossil fuel. And then I think on the other side of that, we're continuing to look at and understand more about onshoring. Is that going to continue to increase? Electricity demand, data centers, AI, electrification. And so all of these is a bit of a convergence. And I think part of what I've asked Attila to show here today is NERC has produced an educational video. And I think it's really important from the industry standpoint, from policymaker standpoint, to really hear the message and be mindful of everything that we're seeing in other markets. These aren't things that are happening yet in Florida, but I think if we're not mindful, these are the things that can happen. And so occasionally we'll bring some of these that are going on, issues that are going on outside our region, but I think it's important for the OUC board to hear these. And it's important that we're aware of it as management as we move forward and we're making these types of recommendations. So I'm going to back off here a little bit. I'm going to let Attila sort of walk you through, again, some of the reasons why and specifically the report that NERC has put here in place. So Attila, I'll turn it over to you.
Commissioners, President Mills, Clint, this is a passion that a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk a little bit about it and try to answer any questions that you may have. As Clint mentioned, my predecessor, Jan, has previously presented to the Commission on significant grid events in the past impacting our industry, and this is intended to be a follow-up. I think most recently, Wade Gillingham, our VP of Water Production and Electric Production, presented in April of 2023 on Winter Storm Elliott. Culmination of those events has resulted in NERC producing a long-term risk assessment, which is the focus of our presentation today. And today's objective is to try to get the audience to learn two acronyms, NERC and LTRA. So we'll focus on that as we go through the presentation. A little bit of the agenda, definition, and industry-related terms, but we'll try to be light on acronyms. Some significant notable events and historical background of how we got here. The LTRA findings, key takeaways, and then considerations for OUC. So there are many regulators in the electric space. FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is an independent agency that regulates interstate transmission of electricity, natural gas, and oil. NERC is focused on the electric side of the business. It's a non-for-profit regulatory agency whose mission is to ensure the effectiveness and efficient reduction of risk of all reliability and security to the grid. There's CERC, which is a subset of DERC in the southeastern region. There's, of course, the EPA, which oversees most of the environmental rules associated with our industry. As Kevin mentioned, there's the Florida Public Service Commission. And I would also mention that not listed here is the OUC Commission. The OUC Commission and the OUC Commissioners play a major role in helping oversee and provide direction on our resource decisions, but also to set expectations on risk oversight, grid reliability, distribution system reliability, and overall resiliency of the system. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background, and I'm going to go probably further back than we have gone to better understand how NERC came about and how the challenges of today are a little bit different than the challenges of maybe a couple decades ago. Next slide, please. I remember where I was on August 14th in 2003. Who else in the room could remember where they were on that day? Wade, thank you.
Definitely.
Commissioner Gross, and I'm sure Clint and many other members of the audience that didn't put their hand up. But it was the largest electrical grid outage in my lifetime. What started off as high load, high summer heat, led into a set of very significant cascading events. A transmission line under high load sagged as normal. In other words, the conductor lengthened and therefore the conductor to the ground got closer as the loads picked up. And as a result of this, it made contact with vegetation. That should have been a controllable event, but grid operators that were overseeing the grid that day, due to a software bug in the system, did not realize what was occurring on the grid. And the grid began to unwind itself in a series of cascading events that led to 55 million individuals being impacted for multiple days. About 45 million on the northeast coast of the United States and about 10 million in Canada, reaching all the way as north as Toronto. A It wasn't just electricity that was impacted. Water systems and many systems lost pressure. Boiler advisories had to be issued. Transportation systems, subways, Amtrak, regional airports were all down. International airports lost ticketing system, electronic ticketing system. So even after power was restored 2.5 days later, many flights, many millions of travelers were impacted as flights were canceled. The blackout was attributed with approximately 100 deaths during that time period. And to put things into perspective, over 500 generating units at 250 plus power plant sites were offline in order to try to regain control of the grid and do a black start and get everything back up. We've never seen anything like that in our lifetimes up to that point. The North American grid and the power grids in general, I believe, are the most complex systems that humans have ever built. When you count the number of moving pieces, the number of workers, the number of systems that have to work with each other, coordinate with each other to make what? The lights come on when you flick the switch. And it unraveled on us that day. Because of this, NERC created 100 subsequent rules to ensure that that type of event never happens again on our watch. These rules were very far-reaching and in many ways effective. Focus of the rules included physical security of the grid, cyber security of the grid, equipment inspection standards like the vegetation management that originally caused the cascading outages, equipment maintenance standards, personnel and grid operator training, systems evaluations, EMS systems and the compliance associated with it, compliance training that and rules that aim to address the culture of compliance for everyone within the system. And as a result, the grid benefited from 2 decades of relatively stable environment. We've never seen a cascading event of that size or that nature since. But a few years ago, things began to pop up that we feel very uncomfortable about as an industry. These events in California, CALISO, August 2020, ERCOT, Winter Storm Uri in February of 21, Winter Storm Elliott, and most recently last summer, ERCOT and many days of very tight conditions are a little bit different than the original Northeast blackout because they're rotating blackouts where grid operators take control of the grid and make the best that they can of a situation. So the NERC rules are working, but obviously NERC is very concerned that these events are becoming more frequent. Next slide. So a little summary on Winter Storm Elliott. Abnormally cold conditions through much of the U.S., record-setting electric demand for many regions in which utilities struggled to meet demand across much of the country, and then rotating blackouts for more than 1.5 million customers. So significant difference from the 55 million, as I mentioned. Still, in an extreme winter storm, there's 60 deaths attributed to the storm's effect. NERC investigation, which includes the LTRA, was published as a result of this in December 2023. Next slide, please. So December 23rd of 2022 was the highest single-day electric demand on record for any day during the winter season for the lower 48 states. ERCOT, PJM, MISO, SPP all set overall winter single-day electric demand records. And then utilities in the Southeast, including TVA, Duke, Louisville Gas and Electric, Kentucky Utilities, were all required to implement rolling blackouts for their customers to maintain control of the grid. Next slide, please. So that leads us up to a summary of NERC's assessment and risk assessment of the forward-looking situation ahead of us. So I'd like to view the video with the team.
NERC's 2023 Long-Term Reliability Assessment highlights growing resource adequacy concerns over the next 10 years. Key measures of future electricity demand and energy needs are rising faster than at any time in recent years, adding to future resource adequacy concerns at a time of unprecedented transformation in the industry. The 2023 LTRA identifies potential electricity supply shortfalls under normal and extreme conditions, finding an increasingly large portion of North America is at risk in the future. This increased risk profile is being driven by rising peak demand forecasts, projected capacity deficits, generator and fuel vulnerability to extreme weather, insufficient dispatchable resources in the future resource mix. These energy and capacity risks underscore the need for reliability to be a top priority for resource and system planners in North America as the energy transition unfolds. NERC's assessment contains actionable recommendations for industry, regulators, and policymakers to ensure continued reliability of the grid as it grows to meet the rising energy needs of the nearly 400 million North Americans it serves. Learn more about NERC's 2023 Long-Term Reliability Assessment, available December 13th, as well as NERC's other many resources found on our website.
Thank you. Let's get into a few of the details here. So one of the things highlighted in the video is growth, and the growth meaning not customer count, but in this case, electric usage. And I think in an environment where growth or the growth rate is steady, it's much easier for grid operators and grid planners to get it right. But what we're seeing here very recently is the compounded annual growth rate of the utility industry tripling. We're not sure exactly all of the drivers for that. We can make some assumptions associated with it. I think some of the drivers for growth include electrification, data center load growth, a robust economy and some onshoring activity, and also some population growth. There's been some demographic changes where the population growth of the United States was as low as 0.3% in 2021, and that is now almost tripled since that time. So there's many things that is causing this compounded annual growth rate of electricity usage to triple. But things take a long time to build: transmission lines, power plants, everything else. So the sudden shift of a environment where growth continues to decline each year versus a sudden uptick in growth is a significant challenge for the industry and the long-range plans from a transmission and power generation standpoint. North America bulk power systems are on the cusp of this growth, and it's not uniform across the base, but it is presenting challenges and opportunities from a revenue perspective, but certainly some immediate challenges for planning the grid and planning for every hour of every day of the year as we look into the future. Rapidly changing resource mix and the introduction of new technologies are also affecting how the system is planned and operated. So we're tinkering deliberately with the grid at an accelerated pace. The LTRA provides clear evidence of growing resource adequacy concerns over the next 10 years, and capacity deficits projected in areas of future generation retirements are expected before replacements resources are in service. Next slide. Energy supply risks are in projection under energy constrained conditions, so meaning high load periods in extremely cold weather or extremely warm weather. Disruptions in fuel supply also lead to inefficient or insufficient electricity supply and further exacerbate the availability of natural gas, which is dependent on the delivery of the electrical energy. Then periods of low wind and solar must be sufficiently balanced with dispatchable generation. This becomes a significant component to grid operators as the propensity of these non-dispatchable resources increase as a total percentage of the power grid. There has been some movement on delayed generator retirements as a result of the events of the last 3 years, but current new generation versus current retirements plus growth still presents a big problem for us across the nation. Next slide. Here's some quotes from both FERC and NERC commissioners, given the events that have been unfolding in the last few years. First rule of holes is if you're in one, stop digging. If the fundamental problem we're facing is we're shutting down dispatchable resources far too prematurely, then the answer is to stop shutting down dispatchable resources far too prematurely. Commissioner Christie from FERC, you can't just shut down your dispatchable generation overnight or within a matter of a few years and think that you can keep the lights on by simply trying to replace it. My point is 1 megawatt versus a megawatt is in the capacity value of wind and solar megawatts is simply not equal to the capacity value of a megawatt. You can't just keep the grid running with a one-on-one replacement. The numbers don't add up. Next slide. We're facing an absolute step change in the risk environment surrounding reliability and energy assurance. In recent years, we witnessed the decline in reliability, and the future projection does not offer a clear path to securing the reliable electricity supply that is essential for health, safety, prosperity of our communities. I think we're facing a very different problem than 2003. It's not a technical one. It's an economic problem. And I think that's what the commissioners are trying to say here, that utilities are trying to meet multiple goals, but there is an economic and an incentive problem in certain regions that is not yet solved. And it's creating a bleak overview in these regional areas. So which regions are at most risk? And can these events happen in Florida? MISO and CERC Central are the greatest areas of concern at the time, including, as defined here, high risk. It means shortfalls may occur at normal peak conditions in the next period between 2024 and 2028. So that's not accounting extreme weather conditions. That just means normal weather conditions if non-dispatchable resources do not perform as anticipated. Elevated risk means shortfalls may occur in extreme weather conditions. This includes potentially transmission lines having to be disabled due to wildfires or droughts, prolonged droughts where hydro generation is not available. And you'll see where those impacts are. It's the areas with hydro generation in the west and the northeast. And the good news of this is normal risk. I didn't mention no risk. It's normal risk, low likelihood of electricity power supply shortfalls in our region in Florida. Next slide. So what's the critical nexus here? Again, the grid problem now, unlike 2003, is less technical in nature and is substantially more of an incentive or economic problem. Utilities and regions are purchasing and integrating carbon-free resources into the resource mix. Under many circumstances and up to a certain resource mix, this has tremendous emissions and fuel savings benefits for our customers. One thing that we must keep at the forefront of our decision-making is that this drives up the combined fixed and variable cost of dispatchable generation required to balance the grid under any weather load scenario. So what do I mean by this? When dispatchable power generation is asked to produce less megawatts or gigawatts of energy per year, think of high solar penetration in the spring or fall, or on sunny days. The cost per megawatt hour from dispatchable generation inevitably increases as cost per megawatt hour because they are relied upon simply less often and used less often. As you can see across the many areas of the country, the incentive model does not adequately compute the risk factors associated with peak demand and extreme weather conditions. Merchant plants and older generation units are being retired without clear visibility on what will meet future projected grid stability requirements. What's becoming increasingly evident is that NERC reliability mandate is in conflict with other regulatory requirements from other agencies. The video shown here by NERC highlights the risk in not so subtle of a way. The lack of a cohesive energy policy. Where'd Terry go? I'm bummed out that there's no cohesive energy policy coming from Washington, but we cannot give up hope, and we must continue advocating for a clear energy policy that helps solve this problem for us collectively. The lack of a clear, cohesive policy leaves local entities to interpret and predict the future. As you can see here, there's growing risk associated with everyone interpreting it for themselves. Next slide. What are the OUC considerations and actions as a result of this? Well, first, OUC generation retirement timelines are aligned with the addition of new capacity. That's key point number one. And OUC reserve margins are forecasted to be well above industry minimums. OUC is investing in generation capacity to meet electrification, growth, and carbon reduction goals. We're investing in winterizing generation assets, and there's multiple transmission system upgrades in the construction phase currently. We're also working on pilot projects and studies to ensure we remain on the low end of the risk reliability spectrum, and we're also actively working to shift OUC's planning approach to sub-hourly modeling. So not the old way of annual averages and growth projection, but making sure that we have resource adequacy in every 15-minute block at the sub-hourly level for the entire year. We're also working with industry partners, utilities, federal, state regulators, and policymakers to ensure reliability, affordability, resiliency, and stability. In addition to that, I have to mention the customer side of the business. We also intend to work with our customers on future pricing models to manage peak demand and thus reduce the total capital and unit department expenses associated with building and maintaining reliable generation, transmission, and distribution systems. So doing this in a more economical way. During the August 2009 heat wave, all OUC generating units were online, and we maintain above adequate reserve margin and even helped neighboring utilities that were below their targeted reserve margins because they missed their load forecast for the year by quite a significant margin. I'd be remiss to say that OUC takes its reputation and the reputation of the Commission, the reputation of our region and our industry seriously, and we will not be inclined to make economic decisions related to capacity margins purely on lowest cost economic analysis. Our intent is always to get it right and be flexible under changing conditions. And that's why we spend so much time studying all these rules, all these studies, and their impacts to us as we contemplate our future. I'm open for questions.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I noticed on the map where you showed how it, in 2003, it went up into Canada on both, well, on this side, of course, not the west, but it's the North America. Is there any independency on grids south in the other country in North America? It's only Canada and the United US.
We are studying some interconnections with our neighbor to the south, but predominantly the connections right now are to the north, mostly because of their hydro and the benefits that provides to our grid.
And that's tied to their capability and technology, right?
That's right.
You would find Canada far more advanced.
And standards.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
The largest city in North America happens to be south of the border. So that's why I'm asking when you talk about capacity, that's why.
Oh, yeah. No, totally understand.
Well, this is sobering.
I think it's a good news story that we have some runway ahead of us, and we must make the right decisions to utilize that runway to its full benefit. I'm pleased to see NERC's assessment of the situation in Florida. And we continue to ensure that we try to learn every lesson from every grid event across the country.
It's very complex, but I thought the educational video from NERC is really telling. NERC is really sending the message of the issue and the importance of resiliency. I mean, the dependency on electricity is not getting less, right? Every industry has high dependency on power and power quality. But we've certainly seen some very unique extreme weather patterns. And, our job is to plan for those unique events, but it is getting more and more challenging to plan for these types of unique events as they're becoming more unique and they're becoming more frequent. And there's a lot of different weather patterns, right? There's fires and floods, and there's a lot of things impacting the U.S. And so it's complicated. There's lots of policies and agencies out there going in a variety of different directions. And so we thought it was timely to inform the board. No specific action, but it's an important subject. We want to continue to share items that are going on outside the OUC market and region. So thank you for that. Thank you, Attila.
Thank you. It's great. That one slide you showed about the energy growth here recently, the load growth, I don't even think it's hit me before. That I'm not sure I've seen that slide. So I'd like to see a copy of that and show that around a few stakeholders that I know too. That was great.
Certainly, we'll forward the entire NERC report.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I mean, you think about some of the administration dollars that have been put out there through IIJA, and we think about perhaps more onshoring, depending on where that goes, right? Those are just load centers that are required here in the U.S. And some may be in our market in state, but we still may be impacted by a variety of different ways. And so you can just see all the challenges. It's complex. And so more to come. I have two items real quick. I want to just briefly share from a safety standpoint. Commissioners, our number one value is make safety first. We have a safety index that we measure ourselves on an annual basis. There are 4 elements within that safety index. I'm proud to say that over the last year, we were in the green related to our KPIs. We achieved our goals in comparison to the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so we've been working really hard on this last year. There's an executive safety committee that I'm a part of. There's a steering committee underneath us. We have quarterly safety training that goes on throughout the organization. Twice a month, we have a safety call with all of our supervisors and up, and we talk about different safety incidents that happen throughout the commission so that we can all learn. We're partnering with our communications team. Here's an example of this quarter. It's PPE. And so we've really been working on sharing the importance of having PPE for our employees and sharing some of the stats related to, if you're not wearing good protective, safe equipment, the injuries that can happen. And so, again, we really proud of this last year. Everyone's really leaned in. There's more work to be done. There's always more work to be done on safety. But as a part of that, we took the opportunity to celebrate. And so the next slide will really talk about the executives got behind some grills and some Blackstones, and we made some pancakes. The team made some pancakes and fresh eggs and sausage, and we had folks that were up at these facilities at sometimes 3:30 in the morning, getting these eggs ready and making fresh breakfast for our employees. And we went throughout Pershing and Stanton and Gardenia and Reliable Plaza to serve fresh breakfast to our employees and just say thank you. Thank you for the hard work. It takes all 1,200 of us to achieve these safety goals. Again, people like Paula and Francesca and a lot of the admins were very involved, and you can see all the different photos of all the executives cooking. They didn't let me get behind a grill and cook, so I got to meet and greet and talk to folks. But a lot of hard work, really proud of our employees. Again, we have to keep focused on make safety first. It's the most important thing we do here in this organization. So just wanted to share that and highlight
Clint,
that.
before you leave
Yes,
this,
yes, sir.
I got to acknowledge.
Okay.
Safety first, safety is very important.
What?
I didn't understand, or I should say, I didn't appreciate the goals that we reached until I saw that lineman competition. And to see how those guys have to work on a daily basis and do that kind of operational thing and still hit the safety number, I thought was outstanding.
Great.
So I just
Thank you
wanted to connect
for
those
sharing
two.
that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
Maybe if I could also just, that's number one. That's these are life-threatening kind of safety issues there, and I know we're focusing, this is just an example, I think, of PPE, but just remind me.
Yes, yes.
Everybody's in on this, right? It's standing on chairs with wheels, it's
Yes.
office workers too, it's walking
Yes.
with a cell
Yep.
phone and reading your cell phone as you walk without holding a banister. Or
Absolutely.
Okay.
PPE was just sort of the quarterly
That's
focus.
good, that's good.
Every quarter, we have sort of a new focus and topic, and so, yes, we're doing a little more intentional and trying to be preventative of the type of injuries we're having. What are those types of injuries? How do we get in front of it and do better training? PPE was an example of one of them. So again, the executive team, the steering committee, the employees, everyone's leaning in, make safety first. There's a greater awareness around the subject at work and at home. And that's kind of what we preach, at work and at home. We don't want you to leave the facility and not think about safety. You go home, you get on ladders, you get on roofs, you do a variety of things, and we want you to be safe at home also as an entire. So good news to celebrate there. And then last thing I'll share, as you may recall, last year, Mindy Bernay, our CFO, announced she was retiring. And so once we worked through that sort of mentally and realized we couldn't talk her out of it, we had to go to work and find ourselves a new CFO. And so with Letitia's support and the rest of the executive team, we went through an entire process and we did find a CFO. So Chris McCullion, who is here with us today. I think this is day 2, right, Chris? So Chris is going to lead our strategic, be our OUC strategic financial leader within the organization, sort of beyond the traditional financial and accounting and corporate modeling and those things. He also will have, again, the same focus that Mindy had. So it's our strategic sourcing and logistics, fleet and facilities, material management, operations, and those types of things. Chris has a tremendous amount of experience with that scope and even a bit of a larger scope in his previous role. He's got over 25 years of experience with financial services. The last 8 years, he's been the CFO for the city of Orlando. He's been a direct and trusted advisor to Mayor Dyer. He's led over 300 different employees over in his different operations. So we're certainly happy to have him on board. Happy to report that Mindy's going to stay with us in transition. No, I don't have a specific date yet. This is not goodbye to Mindy either. So we're going to work on a good transition plan. She has blessed OUC with that. She's blessed Chris with that and myself. And we're going to work through a good transition plan for us. So again, I just want to thank Mindy for that. And for over 25 years of experience, we'll get a chance to talk about Mindy a little bit later. At some
Maybe a
point.
poem, maybe a poem.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, we'll have that official date, but I just want to acknowledge Chris and ask Chris to stand so we can welcome him to the team. So welcome, Chris. And needless to say, he's a little bit familiar with OUC. Commissioners, that's all the comments I have here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, we'll see if there's any commissioner comments. Commissioner Gonzalez, anything?
Nothing. This was an excellent meeting. Thank you. Thank you all.
Commissioner Groves?
Maybe just a couple things that really jump out. Justin, the suite of technical solutions and combined with Attila, your presentation, this is exactly why we have to keep trying some of these other things. We got to figure out how to keep that peak load down. We're never going to be able to afford the transition. So this is great that you guys are working on both sides of the problem. Kevin and Terry on the just organizing the chaos that happens. Really well done and really simple and understand. I want a couple of your slides too to even show my family members what's going on. The damage to the critical infrastructure, really good. That just is such a senseless kind of crime that it just could really bring the economy down. So I just can't stand that stuff either. So I'm glad you guys thought to take the leadership on that and then were successful. That's really great. And I think maybe beyond that, I guess all the guys have left the room, but the lineman thing is my favorite. I won't say a holiday, but it's my favorite event that goes on. I did miss it this year, but boy, what a great, just what a talented pool of folks those are, and always having to be conscious of safety at the same time. So I love what they do for the community. So thank you.
Just briefly, I would echo all those things. Linda, thank you for the marketing presentation and congratulations on the award. I think what you see from the legislative report and then last from Attila, the national report, is I think our biggest risk is we're going to start to lose. One of our biggest risks is we may lose some control, right? We've got the legislative leaders saying you can and can't build this, you can and can't charge this way. We don't want you to put in charging stations. And from what I could see up there on that, grid made it look like we might not want, if we had a national strategy, they might say, we might not let Florida do something because it might impact the grid further. So I think that's, Clinton knows one of the things I first came in here was, I have great confidence in OUC. I have great confidence, everybody in the room had great confidence that we're making the right decisions for the right reasons. And I think there's a lot of people on both ends, could be chipping away some of our autonomy. So I think it's just something to be prepared for.
Thank you. Well, overall, just very quickly, once again, the meeting shows how we're true to our core philosophies and beliefs, and we really put effort and time into that. And secondly, I just want to, again, compliment you on the data shared and the show. As I mentioned to Clint earlier, we're on the forefront of risk mitigation across the board by being proactive, and I think that's a good thing. And then finally, we welcome our new CFO, and my daughter Tracy says, you're gonna make me proud. My daughter worked for him at the city. All right, so we're grateful to each and every one of you, and if there's nothing else, it's 3:49, and I now officially adjourn this meeting. Thank you all. Paula.